From Risk to Riches, The Big Short's Winning Strategy. In 2008, the housing market collapse caused a financial crisis, and many feared the country could experience a recession. The focus was on the actions of the government, and people were upset that nobody went to jail for the crisis. Home prices were believed to never go down, and the movie, The Big Short, a book by Michael Lewis, a veteran financial journalist, was written about this topic. The book is very information-dense but well-researched and verified. In the movie, only some of the people involved in the housing market were featured, but the book goes into more detail about those who were either entirely cut from the film or merged into other characters to make the film more entertaining. Time reading it, then we had to make it as appealing as possible to cinemakers, so we cut out some important details and got some things wrong. The biggest disadvantage we had was explaining the financial instruments. That was the problem I saw. Even though some details were incorrect, I thought the characters were incredible. The first of the three was Michael J. Burry, a physician who gave up being a doctor to start a hedge fund, Cheyenne Capital, in 2000. Burry had a lot of success in the hedge fund by shorting overvalued tech stocks and returned an average of 25% to his investors over the first 4 years. By 2004, he was managing $600 million for investors, which meant that with his returns he was making about $30 million a year for himself from a traditional hedge fund fee structure of 2 and 20. Burry was so successful that by 2004 he stopped accepting new investors because his strategies relied on being able to move in and out of markets without influencing the markets themselves with huge order values. The Burry depicted in the movie was a bit of an eclectic guy, but it probably didn't do a great job of showing that he was already extremely wealthy before he even started investing in the housing market. He was already a millionaire. Steve Eisman, portrayed by Steve Carell, had managed at hedge fund Front Point Partners, renamed Mark Baum Eisman in the movie, with the help of Greg Littman, portrayed by Ryan Gosling, renamed Jared Vinette in the movie, from Deutsche Bank. Cornwall Capital, renamed Brownfield Capital in the movie, had a much smaller pool of capital, but ended up generating the highest returns. They all wanted to short the housing market, but couldn't do so directly. Instead, they used credit default swaps, which are insurance contracts that promise to pay out in the event that a particular bond defaults. This allowed them to short the housing market indirectly. Michael Burry was attempting to take out insurance on mortgage-backed securities, similar to taking out car insurance on a car he did not own. If the mortgage-backed securities crashed, he would get a payout, even though he never owned them. Burry took out a lot of credit default swaps, paying out quarterly premiums for the coverage. Michael Burry started taking on insurance contracts in 2005, which presented a risk higher than the investment bank's tolerance. These insurance contracts, called credit default swaps, could potentially expose a giant conglomerate to $64 billion in subprime mortgage losses. When the housing bubble burst, AIG, which was writing these contracts, did not have enough money to meet its obligations, and the investment banks did not expect anything to go wrong initially. Morph Baum took out insurance on some of the riskiest mortgage-backed securities. This was implied to never go wrong, but it did, and this is why the insurance contracts existed. Insurance premiums are higher for riskier assets, and Morph paid roughly $80 to $90 million annually in premiums. Later, we see him buying credit default swaps on BBB-rated mortgage-backed securities. These assets were risky and had a 1% chance of failure in a given year. The safety and risk of these securities could change depending on the mortgages inside them, such as if they are full of people with high incomes, good credit scores, and low loan sizes. In the early 2000s, banks created mortgage bonds by layering mortgages into tranches. The tranches were like 3 buckets that would be filled up with payments from people with mortgages. The top bucket got filled up first and then overflowed into the second bucket and then to the third, and so on. The final bucket was the cheapest to buy and could generate a good return on investment if everyone paid their mortgages. If some people didn't pay their mortgages, the last bucket might make nothing. Structuring the mortgage bonds with cascading buckets created desirable properties for investors, as the first bucket was much safer than individual mortgages, and the last bucket offered higher returns than the interest rates on the loans. By blending thousands of mortgages together into one flow of money, returns became more predictable and diversification was possible with one asset class. Michael Burry had an idea that you could mix together lots of mortgages to create mortgage-backed securities, MBS. He then suggested to create a new financial product called a collateralized debt obligation, CDO, which used a mix of a lot of mortgages. The idea was that the diversification would offer safety by getting returns from lots of risky mortgage buckets. This worked until some firms started taking the lowest buckets from these CDOs and mixing them together to make new CDOs, known as CDO squared. To protect investors, they could buy insurance on any of these buckets using credit default swaps. However, it was not possible to write insurance contracts on mortgage-backed securities. Instead, Michael Burry would have had to write credit default swaps on collateralized debt obligations. Todd Burry is agreeing to buy $5 million worth of credit default swaps on mortgage funds. He is willing to increase that to $100 million. The real Michael Burry made a bet on collateralized debt obligations, which were made up of other buckets of debt. They bought $8.4 billion worth of credit default swaps related to mortgages and financial companies. He was very confident that this would be a successful bet. His investors were not as confident. In the movie The Big Short, the events of 2008 unfold as the financial products these three parties bet against start to collapse. Brownfield, Scion, and FrontPoint had two ways to turn their short positions into cash. They could either wait for the assets they bet against to collapse and collect their insurance payout, or they could sell the insurance contracts back to the banks that were desperate to get back the security they had loaned out. Brownfield was able to make much higher returns than Burry and Baum because they bought insurance contracts on much safer A and AA assets with the limited pool of investor money they had. However, almost all AAA mortgage-backed securities and more than 90% of A and AA securities did not fail, meaning Brownfield would not be able to collect on their premiums. Despite this, the banks were so desperate for insurance as the financial system was unfolding that Brownfield and FrontPoint were able to sell the contracts back to the banks at a much higher price, making them a huge return. After the success of The Big Short, all parties involved made a lot of money. Michael Burry shut down his firm, Cheyenne Capital, and decided to support himself by managing his own investments, a process called a family office. He is known to have taken short positions in Tesla and Cathie Wood's ARK Innovation ETF, but not nearly as successful as his position in The Big Short. Brownfield, aka Cornwall Capital, still operates today with $262 million in assets under management. FrontPoint Partners was shut down in 2011 after one of its senior managing partners, Chip Skowron, pled guilty to insider trading and was sentenced to 5 years in prison. These hedge funds made billions of dollars by executing The Big Short, but for some companies, that's less than they make or lose every day.